Imagine the 13th century. The Mongol hordes are tearing across Asia, leaving shattered empires in their wake. In the Middle East, the remnants of the Seljuk Sultanate are crumbling. A power vacuum emerges. Anatolia, a land bridge between east and west, becomes a battleground. Warlords and petty kings vie for control. This is where our story begins. The Byzantine Empire, the once mighty Roman Empire in the east, is a shadow of its former glory. Its power dwindled. Into this volatile world steps a new player, Osman Gazi. Osman Gazi was a natural leader. He possessed a rare combination of charisma, military skill, and political cunning. He was said to be a man of great piety and courage, a devout Muslim who instilled a sense of holy purpose in his followers. He inspired his men to fight not just for land or plunder, but for a greater cause, the dream of an Islamic empire that would spread the faith and bring glory to their name. Stories of Osman's bravery and justice spread throughout the region, attracting warriors and scholars to his banner. He formed a strong bond with his followers, based on mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. Osman understood the importance of alliances. He carefully cultivated relationships with local emirs and chieftains. Many were drawn to his cause, recognizing in him a leader who could unite the fragmented Turkic tribes of Anatolia. His early conquests focused on Byzantine border towns and fortresses. The Byzantines initially underestimated Osman. They saw him as just another troublesome chieftain, a nuisance to be dealt with, not a threat to their empire. They were about to learn a very harsh lesson. As Osman's power grew, so did his ambition. He began to cast his eyes on larger prizes, strategic cities and wealthy provinces that lay within the Byzantine heartland. The Byzantines, finally awake to the danger, began to mobilize their forces. They sent armies to confront Osman, but they were often poorly led and ill-equipped. Decades of internal strife and decline had taken their toll. The Byzantine soldiers, though brave, were no match for the ferocity and zeal of Osman's warriors. Osman, a master of both diplomacy and warfare, played his hand carefully. He knew that a direct confrontation with the full might of the Byzantine Empire would be disastrous. He needed a decisive victory. That opportunity presented itself in the spring of 1285. Osman saw a chance to strike a devastating blow against his enemies. The call to arms echoed through the hills and valleys of Osman's domain. His warriors, eager for glory and plunder, answered with enthusiasm. They were a diverse force, hardened veterans and eager youths, united by their faith and their loyalty to Osman. Osman, a seasoned commander, knew that victory depended on more than just numbers. He needed to choose the battlefield carefully. He chose the slopes of Mount Armenia, a rugged, unforgiving terrain that would negate the Byzantine advantage in cavalry. He divided his forces into several units, placing them at strategic points along the mountain pass. He ordered his men to conceal themselves and wait for his signal to attack. Osman knew the Byzantines would be expecting a frontal assault. He planned to surprise them with a well-timed ambush. As the sun began to set, Osman gathered his commanders. "We fight not just for ourselves," he declared, "but for our faith, for our children, for the future of our people." They were ready to make history. The battle begins, Mount Armenia, 1285. The morning mist still clung to the slopes of Mount Armenia as the Byzantine army approached. They marched in a long column, their armor glinting in the pale sunlight, confident in their numbers and their superior equipment. They had heard rumors of an Ottoman ambush, but their general, blinded by arrogance, dismissed them as the whispers of cowards. As the Byzantine vanguard entered the narrow mountain pass, the silence of the morning was shattered by the ear-splitting war cries of the Ottoman warriors. Hundreds of arrows rained down upon the unsuspecting Byzantines from the concealed positions on the high ground. The pass became a death trap. Panic spread through the Byzantine ranks as their comrades fell around them. Their formations broke down as they struggled to find cover from the deadly hail of arrows. The Ottoman warriors, sensing their enemies' fear, charged down the slopes, their scimitars flashing in the sunlight. The clash was fierce and brutal. The Byzantines, though taken by surprise, were no strangers to warfare. But the initial shock of the ambush had taken its toll. Clash of iron tactics and turning points. Osman Gazi, a keen observer of the battlefield, saw an opportunity to deliver the killing blow. He rallied his elite guard and led them in a daring charge against the Byzantine center. Their target, the Byzantine general and his bodyguard, the Ottoman warriors fought like men possessed, cutting through the Byzantine ranks like a hot knife through butter. The Byzantine general, surrounded by his few remaining bodyguards, fought bravely but was overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the Ottoman assault. He fell, mortally wounded, and with his death, the last vestiges of Byzantine resistance crumbled. Panic spread like wildfire through the Byzantine ranks. The Ottoman warriors, sensing victory, pressed their attack with even greater ferocity. The Byzantines, leaderless and demoralized, broke and ran. They were pursued relentlessly by the victorious Ottomans, who cut them down without mercy. The Battle of Mount Armenia was a resounding victory for Osman Gazi and his followers. They had proven their military prowess and announced their arrival as a major power in the region. Victory's price. Osman surveys the battlefield. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the blood-soaked battlefield, Osman Gazi surveyed the scene of his triumph. The ground was littered with the bodies of the dead, both Ottoman and Byzantine. The air was thick with the stench of death. Victory, Osman knew, was a fickle mistress. It often came at a terrible price. He dismounted his horse and walked among the fallen, his head bowed in respect for the dead, both friend and foe. He stopped to speak words of comfort to his wounded warriors, praising their courage and offering them what solace he could. The Battle of Mount Armenia had been a costly victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. It marked a turning point in the history of Anatolia. It signaled the beginning of the end for Byzantine dominance in the region, and it laid the foundation for what would become one of the most powerful empires the world had ever seen, the Ottoman Empire. Osman, despite his grief for his fallen comrades, allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. This victory, Osman knew, was just the beginning. The aftershocks, the Byzantine Empire reels. News of the defeat at Mount Armenia sent shockwaves through the Byzantine Empire. The seemingly invincible Byzantine army had been routed by a relatively unknown Turkish chieftain. It was a humiliating blow to Byzantine pride and prestige. The empire, already weakened by internal strife and economic decline, was now facing a new and dangerous threat on its eastern frontier. The Byzantine emperor, reeling from the defeat, desperately sought to rally his remaining forces. He called upon his allies for aid, but the response was lukewarm at best. Many of his supposed allies saw the writing on the wall. They were reluctant to commit their own forces to what they perceived as a losing cause. The defeat at Mount Armenia had exposed the deep-seated weaknesses that plagued the Byzantine Empire. Its army, once the envy of the known world, was now a shadow of its former self. Its treasury was depleted, its leadership was divided and indecisive. Osman Gazi, ever the opportunist, was quick to exploit the situation. A legacy forged, Osman's triumph, the first stone laid. The Battle of Mount Armenia, though little known in the grand sweep of history, was a pivotal moment. It marked the beginning of the Ottoman Empire's meteoric rise to power. It shattered the aura of invincibility that had long surrounded the Byzantine Empire. It set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to the fall of Constantinople and the rise of the Ottomans as the dominant power in the Eastern Mediterranean. Osman Gazi, the victor of Mount Armenia, would not live to see the full realization of his dream. But he had laid the foundation for an empire that would span centuries and encompass vast territories. He had shown what could be achieved with courage, determination, and a belief in a greater cause. The Ottoman Empire, forged in the fires of battles like Mount Armenia, would go on to leave an indelible mark on the course of history. And it all began on a rugged mountainside with a decisive victory by a little-known Turkish chieftain named Osman.